Ladies and gentlemen, it is Wednesday. We got Tim Seavey from San Diego State University. All right. I am Jared Kubika Miller. I am your debate coach and professor of communications. I don't even know what Matt's doing right now. Haven't heard from him.
When I heard last, he was learning how to braid. I didn't think that took an entire evening, but like he's really dedicating himself to it. Like, as is typically the case with Matt, he's really into
competitive braiding.
I think that's the goal. Obviously, like one day hopes to be an Olympic braider, but particularly the horses when they do the dressage, he wants to really like that.
Oh my god! Just that one job right there. There's got to be someone that's their full-time job, and somehow they got into that.
And I'm extremely sorry for having offended you, sir, madam. There's
only one person in the
world. That's what Matt hopes to one day be.
All right.
Well, it is the second Tuesday or second Wednesday. So what are we talking about?
We got ourselves some topics. I was just throwing them into the little banners here, but our topics are given to us by a professional speech and debate association. People, you should check this out. If you want to improve your skills, or if you just like being part of a high-performing community of people, it is an excellent opportunity. You don't have to go to any schools to do it. It's kind of like Toastmasters, in a way, but there are awards, and some of them he's incorporating cash prizes and stuff to some of them. So you should really check it out. All right.
Yeah, good 300 to 400 times better than Toastmasters, though.
Yeah,
this is competitive quality. You're getting good speakers coming out the other side of this.
Yeah. So as we do on these days, we kind of simulate the topic selection process. We get a little long-winded on the topic selection process, but we got to start by doing a nice little even. All right, so how about this? Tim, heads, you are AF, tails, you are neg.
Sounds good.
All right, here we go.
No whammies.
All right.
All right, I am neg.
You are neg. Okay, so get yourself oriented. Okay.
Cool.
And if you got, I put the topics in the banners, so whenever you're striking, you can throw it up there and let me know.
Okay, right. So negative strikes first. I will strike this topic. Oh, wait, the wrong one. Wait for it. I do not have them. All right. The Twitter is better than Facebook.
Okay, so that's the ban. All right. Twitter does more harm than Facebook. Oh, darn. All right. What's the reasoning behind it?
I hate this topic because I hate both. I really don't think that I can come up with a lot of arguments as to why either of them do good, like community building or whatever at best. So if I'm on the negative side, I'm arguing that Twitter is better than Facebook, or that Facebook does more harm than Twitter. I think I would generally disagree with that, because I think Facebook at least creates a little bit more dialogue. I tend to prefer those community forums that are more dialogic, and look down on those that are more just monologuing, that are more just like, here's a way to give someone
I really like that. The dialogue versus monologue. Yeah, I like that's pretty dope.
So like Instagram, I would say is like that same thing. But so I think Twitter also, just by having such a length constraint, I think also just diminishes communicative depth, or it increases the likelihood of just clickbaity soundbite out of context stuff. That I think is some
like shock value stuff. I did have that as one of my top ones. I could have gone either way, but I did have that as my number one neg. So yeah.
But Facebook is also destroying the world in 1,010 different ways as well, and selling data and manipulating elections, and just doing all both of them do so much evil. I think it would just be like a race to the bottom, and I don't want to do that debate. So that'd be the first one. That's actually the first one that I would strike on either side.
Oh, okay. Well, if you were on neg though, you would have preferred it then over AF. If you're forced on this topic, which side would it be? It would probably be neg.
Yeah, I would prefer the neg.
Yeah.
Okay. Just because I think I can at least chum up a few arguments about, Facebook creates friendships and whatever. And like there's some community building, the ability to like access resources that like I just think Twitter is really limited and is more or less just like a garbage quality news source.
Now, if I'm stuck on the affirmative, though, just the sheer number of users, I think would be my little sort of leverage on that one. I'm like, well, you're right. It's like way lower quality, but there's also way fewer users too. I was surprised.
Right.
Yeah, at how like it's not even close, to being.
There's like 15 people that still use Twitter and the rest are bots.
Yeah. So, yeah, you could get into that whole Elon Musk thing too. Yeah.
Oh, you know what? I hadn't even thought of that. That would actually be kind of an interesting direction to go in of like the likelihood that Twitter is going to get even worse. Yeah, man, if I were on the affirmative.
Let's see, like there was just recently the security or the former like security chief like testified to Congress about how horrible the security is at Twitter. And he's talking about, it's like, it doesn't really matter who has access to the keys if there aren't any locks on the doors. It's like quoted in the freaking Congress is saying. So I'm like, cool. I can use that. That's for sure.
Yeah. I think if I were on the affirmative, I wouldn't try and defend a single thing that Twitter does. I would just pick out the like human trafficking that's facilitated through Facebook and pick out the like, rigged elections that are more easily done through like, community deep fakes in Facebook, and the dissemination of like, fake news, I would say, is even more aggressive through Facebook because of spheres. I think like the existence of echo chambers, I would say, is probably more prevalent in Facebook than in Twitter, because I think Facebook has a lot more information about its users and profiles them and like feeds them things that are similar. So I think the like, extrematizing polarization is probably worse. So anyways, that's it. I hate this debate, but I would just be a race to the bottom of like which one is destroying the world more.
All right. So I get to strike next. This is mine right here. Yeah.
Ooh, all right. Really?
Yeah. I don't want to talk about speech debate. I don't want to have this meta debate. You know what I mean? It's like we have enough of those talks over coffee.
That was my number 2. I was actually really stoked to.
I know. I saw you salivating over that one, and I'm like, oh man, I better cut that off right now. God.
Okay, so if you were forced into the affirmative on that, though, what would you say?
I'd probably go on the speech side. And I just go sheer numbers like that. I think the criteria I'd be going for is like, if you had to choose between giving this one skill, like just the speaking skills or just the debating skills, to like, everybody. Mm-hmm. All right. Forced choice between that. Yeah, I think the speaking skills would be, I'd rather everybody have the ability to speak than necessarily everybody have the ability to debate. Now, obviously, there's a whole lot of overlap between that. You have to concede that. But, and it on the, whoever's on the other side of that is might want to just blur that line. It's kind of like, there is no difference. And I guess that's okay.
Oh, no, I would not at all. I would be like, all right, the world of the affirmative is a bunch of Twitter influencers and Instagram models. Everyone's a specialist and everyone can communicate, and not a damn person knows how to listen or take in information. Like there's no there's no self-analysis. There's no reflection. There's no testing. It's just polish and like proliferation of information. It's all output, no input. So that's what I would that's the flag I would stake in the ground on debate, is that it requires an interaction of differing ideas. So while the like skill set is completely useless in the world, like the ability to like, oh no, but I perm your counter plan. Like some of the concepts you can argue like get their little ways in. Topicality into your 1L or whatever. So like I may have a couple of those like life skills, but I think for the most part, the more technical debate doesn't translate to the real world, but the thinking does. So I would just get into like the importance of critical thinking, interpreting information, listening, and respond, whatever. So I think I might
go the direction of, because now that you say that, it gives me a little bit more thought. It's like how you're thinking about the audience, because again, if I'm forced on to choose the speech side, I mean, obviously I'm cutting it, but if I'm on the affirmative and I get to choose speech, then how you view the audience is very different, right?
Mm,
Because like you're trying to, on the speech side, you're trying to be a bit more invitational and you're accommodating.
mm,
And the debate is sort of, a zero-sum game. There can
mm.
be only one at the end of the round. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I think that, it might get a little bit more on the relationship interpersonal level, like what are we cultivating and stuff like that.
Okay. Cool. I dig that.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
That's all
I
right.
think that would be a more interesting debate than you give it credit, but fair enough. All right, the next that I would hack, and this one sucks because this is my first choice for the affirmative. This is what I would really want to debate on the affirmative, but on the negative, I would kill homework does more harm than good.
Oh, I'm glad that one's gone. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so if I were on the affirmative, I would really want this one because I think there's just a ton of evidence that suggests that like homework is really just damaging to students and like it is used as like a punishment in some classes. Like it doesn't increase learning. It's like a just increases the mechanization of like our industrial education model. Like you never stop doing, you just memorize more and continue your rote work and the grind never ends. And like, here's your job in a factory as like
Yeah.
our, education model was built off of, and doesn't really do a whole ton in the way of like application of, skills or like applied learning or inductive reasoning. It's just like memorize shit as hard as you can for as many hours as you can. So I don't like homework for many reasons. Also like the division between like in school, like work-life balance, whatever. I think it just
Yeah.
creates
I love those arguments. I really do. I think we need to be making more of them. If I was on the affirmative, like Stanford did a study about like the correlation with mental health and high
Totally, right.
achieving, people like that. And so there's pretty good stuff like that. And the socializing aspect, you know what I mean?
Sure.
It's like you only have so many hours in the day.
Mhm.
And so the socializing gets cut out when you add more and more homework requirements. Now, if on the other hand, if I find myself on the neg on that one, I really like the different learning styles.
Okay.
Not everyone learns well in a large group. Some people just are good at reading, you know what I mean? And so
Sure.
like the classroom setting isn't all that great for them. And so I wouldn't be saying that like you should only be doing homework. I would probably make a strategic concessions like we do too much homework, but that doesn't make homework inherently bad. That just means we should do
Mm.
less of it.
Yeah, I think I would go for like the flipped classroom and like lean
Yeah.
into the evidence that says like homework used effectively increases the function, the utility of class time. So like the
Yeah.
way that we currently just go to class and listen to lectures is ridiculous. All lectures should be homework, and that's the only thing. So like you just get the base concepts outside, and then you can use
Yeah.
time with the experts and with your peers for activities in class and like go through how experiential learning is like necessitates the existence of homework. Like
Yeah.
if there's so that's what I would probably go for. And like
Totally.
how more and more class times are getting shortened. So if you only have an hour of class, how do you possibly like learn a subject in an hour a day or whatever? So I'd probably go that route if on the negative, but I would not want to debate this one on the negative, honestly. I think
Yeah.
there's too much evidence stacked against you.
Now so just looking into it because I didn't know what side I was on. One thing I didn't think about was that homework is one of the things that provides teacher feedback, and so otherwise the teachers think that everything's always going like
Oh,
really well in class. You know what I mean? They don't know like what is actually sticking and stuff like that, and so that's a really interesting argument. I don't know. The more I think about it, how airtight it is. I'm like,
yeah,
not really. You can
in
get
class
feedback other
activities
ways,
and quizzes and what like I think there are other ways that
Yeah.
like
Well, I mean, just like, yeah.
if you did a flipped classroom model and all lectures were done outside, then the professor could immediately see student retention and knowledge just by nature of like watching them do the activity they're supposed to be doing. But yeah, that one still it just gets dicey because I think it's so difficult to implement, and I think you get into issues of access of like, okay, so we're assuming that all students have access to the internet and a strong signal and all the time and place to learn stuff, like because the flipped classroom absolutely necessitates homework, whereas
Yeah.
like the traditional model, like you can kind of get away with not doing it.
Yeah.
So I think that would be an interesting debate. Honestly, I'd be good with it on either side, but I would really prefer that on the affirmative.
Yeah. I might even get into the whole like the um Malcolm Gladwell's sort of, study of how people become experts at things.
Oh yeah.
It's like you're supposed to put in, and he just like came to a number, 10,000 hours. You got to put in
Right.
10,000 hours. And so I'm not saying that like if you're going to learn something, you have to master it, but just the amount of time you put into a subject does pretty strongly correlate to how well you understand it. And so that just adds, like, you can't set aside like 4 hours for every single student every week. Is kind of like they have to do some self-learning,
Yeah.
and so it's just logistics.
Sure.
You know what I mean? It's like we got to do it. So
Yeah, I think there's a lot that speaks to experiential learning, and like that a lecture is a really low likelihood of retention. So just listening to a lecture, or even like doing an in class, a guided note taker or whatever, like many of the common models of information, input output, get into like Paulo Coelho, like pedagogy of the press type stuff. Like you really don't have a whole lot of retention in that existing model. But the more interactive classroom experiences can be, the better. And so I think that may be a little bit of a wash, because I think both sides can try and claim that. And like, yeah, that's why we have homework, so that you can have an interactive classroom. But I still think that really errs on the side of the affirmative. Like Denmark doesn't have any homework. It's just a thing, which Denmark is like the weird golden standard of education. So
yeah. All right. Okay. So I get to strike, and then the remainder. All right. So let's talk about the last strike, though. This is mainly
I was
because
kind
I'm
of
on the affirmative. You know what I mean? I'm like, like I could come up with a few cases. I think I could cut. I think I could, like, say, sure, there's some contexts where I'm totally down for people to just take matters into their own hands. You know what I mean? It's like when like parents with their young children, and they just snap on somebody. You know what I mean? Because they hurt their kids. I'm like, yeah, you know what? I'm not going to tell them to wait for the authorities. I'm like, just go to town. Like, yeah.
Wait, the kids go to town, or the parents? I'm sorry.
The parents go like take that fool out. Like whatever he did to your kid, you're completely justified. You see what I'm saying? It's like if a parent feels a need for vengeance, like. So I love the creative criteria, right? I'm like, okay, here, let me paint you a story. All right. You are there when it is revealed that somebody was abusing somebody else's child, and they're face to face with the person that did that. You know what I mean? And they start hauling off and hitting those person. Do you intervene and tell them no, wait for the cops, or do you just let them go at it like a wild monkey on that horrible person? And I'm like, all right, let them go at it. Just keep going. I'm not stopping you.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting take on it, right? Like there are some circumstances under which like our judicial system just doesn't do anything, right?
I just don't know how well that would fly. You know what I mean? It's like narrowing
probably,
it down.
because I think like there's just it would be very easy to start just like stretching the example. Like I don't think the example would really hold a ton of like you know, fringe case tests. But interesting. I mean, I like the idea. I think it could be a fun debate. Probably because like the definition of justice is also super messy. I think it would really become a heavy definitions debate. So I don't think there's really any circumstance under which like justice is really served. Like even in our judicial system, someone steals a car and they get a certain amount of time where they're like imprisoned and or fined. Like, is that justice? Like, is that like the perfect retribution where like the person whose car was stolen is now like, everything is better for them? No. And like, does that person really learn their lesson? Like, no, they probably lost their job or like whatever access they had. Like now they're in the system. Now they got a record, and that means they can't like get any new shit. So I think like any real world example of like how judicial systems work is pretty straight. Like, I don't think we have a lot of practical applications of justice that work or that are good rollouts of justice. So therefore, it's like, all right, all of our like police systems are vengeance to some extent. Like the fact that we have, the way that we treat, anyone that commits a crime is more vengeance than it is justice. So I think it would end up becoming a really mushy debate. Like it would be like weirdly definitional of like, is our current criminal justice system vengeance, or are they, actually
I
exacting
think
justice?
I think that it opens up a whole lot of room for critical debates too. You know what I mean? It's like when you're talking about this is like critical legal studies type of stuff.
Sure.
Like I think that would be a good discussion to have, but I wouldn't be able to predict, especially on the neg. I'm not on the neg, so that's fine. But I wouldn't be able to predict what my ground is on the neg as much if I'm starting to go critical. I'd prepare my own damn critique, but I'm thinking, what's stopping the affirmative from running the same damn one in their first speech? And so that's what I'm worried about.
Yeah, that's true. I think on the negative, I would just go hard into like truth and reconciliation. So like Desmond Tutu stuff, like post-apartheid, like here is how justice can actually be served. Like here's an example of what justice really is, and it is the antithesis to vengeance. So like the worst criminals of completely like unforgivable crimes are not best dealt with by being imprisoned or by being executed or by whatever, right? Those criminals that committed the very worst can serve what is the closest thing to justice by becoming advocates to the opposite, right? Where like they're, beautiful stuff and Nobel Prizes awarded around for the idea that like if you have them deliver large public addresses and like speech circuits and like become advocates in a very physical way and like dedicate their life to doing the opposite of what their crime was, like that feels much closer to justice. And it is by the exact nature of the opposite of vengeance, right? Like it is not exacting punishment on someone that doled out violence or that doled out whatever kind of punishment. So I think you got some interesting historical examples that you could get into on it. But those really only are accessible to the negative. I don't think the affirmative has much of like, yeah, Hammurabi's code, like Babylon was good times. Remember that? Like,
all right. So that leaves our topic. Boom.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm on the YouTube
actually think
side.
this is a really good topic.
Yeah.
It was my number one for the negative, so I'm glad we did this actually.
It was my number one for the AF, but so
all right, why is YouTube better than Netflix then on the AF?
So what I would do is I'm like the best of both worlds is that Netflix has like really awesome original programming. All right. And like a nice assortment of movies, right? Whereas YouTube, their awesome stuff is they have live sports and they have how-to videos would be the thing that I'd be going for.
I didn't think about how-tos as I wrote this down. I was like, ooh, that actually is a really good one.
Yeah, so I think I might focus in on the do-it-yourself mode versus the passive entertainment. And whereas like getting out and doing stuff is better than Netflix and chill.
Damn. Yeah, because honestly, how the hell did anyone fix anything before YouTube? Like, I hope that you bumped into someone at the hardware store that could give you a perfect description, like, and that you remembered all of it one time. Like, I don't know how the hell people learn to fix or do anything that's difficult before YouTube. So that's
I love that stuff. I love that stuff. I mean, hell, we're doing it right now, right? It's like we're like I kind of consider this how-to on
yeah. All right. So that's pretty beefy on the affirmative, because then you can go all about just like the decentralization of information. Like Netflix is just another production company at the end of the day. It's just another, like, it uses the same collection of people from Hollywood. Like, I think so. The reason I had it as my number one on the neg was I was going to go into all the evils that YouTube does versus all the goods that Netflix does. But the goods that Netflix does really are just from like a content perspective of like giving more demand and creative liberties to creators. So it's like it improves the existing model of Hollywood that we've already got, like tons and tons of money, so you get all the actors and cinematographers and whatever, but it also opens up just the spectrum opens wider for new creative people to come into it. So that's kind of like the best version of Netflix. I think like the very best thing Netflix does is improves our existing entertainment like model. But you're right, it is just entertainment. Like there's really nothing else going on there.
Now they're like I'd be a little worried if the neg was going to go the direction of how each treats its content creators, whereas I think like Netflix probably has a pretty good edge on that. Like people actually get like all the people involved in the creation of this is,
are well compensated and like probably part of unions and there's not an
Oh, it
algorithm
could
that
totally be a
screws over the
union.
money they're
Oh
making
my
in.
God. It would be a pro-union neg.
Oh yeah, just be like, hey, you know, SAG and every other associated union in Hollywood is represented in Netflix, and not one of those things is represented through YouTube.
I like
YouTube gets to
that.
control all of the So I think I think if you went for like the centralization of content versus the decentralization, like that's the argument that I would make on YouTube is like, look at how decentralized it is. Like everyone gets to be part of it.
Yeah.
The problem comes to like then in doling out cash, right? Like, no, it's actually hyper centralized where it's like a couple of people that control the algorithm get to decide where all the money goes, and there's no other, you know, means of retribution. Like this algorithm changes and your YouTube business completely dissolves overnight, or they decide to demonetize your channel and it's done, right? Versus like Netflix, you have enough. I mean, I suppose they can pull your show, but even still, like all the people that watch it are still supporting that thing. So, yeah, I think that's maybe one of the avenues I'd go into. I think YouTube also just copy paste everything we talked about into Twitter, Facebook stuff. Like Netflix just cannot collect that much information about you. At best, it knows what kinds of shows you watch. But YouTube, meanwhile, is collecting every bit of information that they possibly can about you and are targeting you with a ton of ads. So I think ads is another one. While it feels small, I would make that like an entire contention.
Okay.
Just like there are no ads on Netflix. YouTube is built on ads. Ads suck. Vote neg.
Yeah. Yep. I think there's plenty of good stuff. I really like the union one. But I think the misinformation one is great too. Like I think YouTube has way more misinformation than Netflix. You know what I mean? It's like just because Netflix doesn't get into the news business all that much. You know what I mean? I can't even think.
And, you know, I suppose that actually is. I think that's a debate in itself. Like the mass proliferation of information versus misinformation. Like it's inevitable. You have both in any platform, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, whatever, any platform that allows anyone a microphone and a stage to give information. And that's amazing. All the how-tos, like I'm sure save people billions of dollars a year in whatever, right? And sometimes send some people to hospital for not listening to the safety portions of it. But like for the most part, how-to does amazing stuff and teaches people all kinds of skills. But then on the other end, like the misinformation, just like what's the real downside there? So I think that like just in a vacuum, YouTube does more harm than good. Interesting kind of topic.
Oh, like just in a vacuum, not even
just
compared to. Okay.
Like all the goods that YouTube puts out with, how-tos and, getting creative people to become famous and get money and be recognized and whatever. Because like it's interesting when there becomes a swap. Like there are some YouTube stars that just made content on YouTube with their camcorder in their backyard until eventually like they're now on TV, and have Netflix shows, which is kind of cool when that happens. But if it's just like YouTube on its own, is it good enough to outweigh the misinformation that exists on it? And like the hate speech and the horrible violence and like all the stuff that happens when you have just a platform like that's that big, with billions of videos uploaded.
And I mean, if you want to go a little funny with it, you might be able to say that YouTube is known for, people just being alone and scrolling, but Netflix and chill has its own reputation. You know what I mean? So that's the debate now. It's like, do you really want to
bring people together?
Yeah.
For better, for worse.
It'd be like it's like a freaking sex positive neg or something like that.
Oh, that's kind of interesting. Yeah. So there's more to this debate than I originally thought at all. Oh man. Well, okay. So the other thing is they're both publicly traded, right?
Okay.
So that's one thing that's really interesting about Netflix, and I want to research this more. I don't know if that makes it better as a production company or worse. Like I don't think a lot of production companies, like I don't think I can buy stock in Paramount. I don't think that's a thing. Maybe I can. I don't know, but I don't think I can. Like Disney, I can, but I don't think many other production companies like New Line Cinema, I don't think I can buy.
That's interesting.
Stock.
I didn't even think about that.
But I can buy Netflix stock, and I think that kind of inserts a little bit of like community advocacy. So like after all the Kevin Spacey stuff came out, and like that was like House of Cards was like Netflix's flagship, and even still is like that little knock knock from House of Cards, like that's still like their little soundbite logo thing. And yet that backlash, like I'm sure that impacted stock prices, and there probably was a correlation between like, you can pressure the company to do something or another based on like them being publicly traded. So I don't know. I'd have to look into that to see just like how much more hold that gives consumers and like the public over the company's actions, and if that's good or bad.
Yeah. Well, this was fun. This would be a good debate. We'll come back next week. We'll be talking about some, I don't know, whatever the pop culture flavor is of the moment. I think that's what we're doing next week. That's what we're changing it up to.
Also, yeah, no longer third week theory. It is now third week pop
No,
culture.
I think we're that well is running dry a little bit. So
I'll do my best to apply some theory to the Kardashians.
Yeah. Like that'd be dope. All right. So that's the way that the theory is going to be used. We're going to be applying debate theory to pop culture.
Sounds good.
All right, everyone. We'll see you next week.
See ya.